Look, it's hard not to. I think that, one is great, two is fantastic. If we get to three that are reasonably good quality potential candidates, and by the way, using different technologies, the chance of it being a really good long-term solution go up remarkably. So, I mean, great news across the board. Question, of course, remains of how much economic good news we should price into that. Obviously, good health news, that's the far more important piece. But economically, you know, Australia is in a pretty good place, quite honestly. I do worry about the global issue, though. We're still seeing the US economy probably getting worse before it gets better. It may not really improve in the US health wise until that vaccine is largely available and implemented. So there is a long row yet to hoe, and we'll see whether that's enough to solve any sort of other downturn in between now and then.
What do you make of Qantas flagging that it would make any vaccine compulsory for international travel? That's quite a big step, isn't it?
It really is, and it's a fascinating thing to see. We're seeing more and more companies kind of taking those quasi-government decisions on their own behalf on a range of issues, including, of course, vaccinations. I think Alan Joyce it's a pretty pragmatic view, quite honestly. It's a controversial one, but he needs confidence back in flying really, really quickly. So for those who will say, look, I don't want to be put in that position, I want to be vaccinated, he's gambling. The other 99% of people say, well, I will feel okay about getting on a Qantas plane if I know the rest of the people sitting beside me, in front of me, behind me are vaccinated as well. I'm simply less likely to be flying with someone with COVID, particularly long haul for 10, 20 hours. You really want to make sure you want to hope that you have a very, very minimal chance. And I think that's the call he's making now, is not so much a health call, or that's, I'm sure, part of it, simply a case of, personally, I probably won't be really keen on getting on a long haul flight until we know, at least without a mask and all that kind of stuff, until we know that it's very, very unlikely that COVID's a risk.
Yeah, it's a bold decision, but certainly one I think that will be popular among most, as you say. Now, let's look at the markets in general, but also superannuation. This is a fascinating political fight that's been set up now. And the government, I think, is seizing this opportunity. Yes, the timing of that report, absolutely. But you never waste a crisis, do you?
You don't, do you? Especially if you get, well, look, I don't want to impugn the reputation of people who are involved in the crisis, but you also, or the inquiry, sorry, you don't also hold an inquiry unless you know the outcome, right? So I'm going to assume the government had some sense of maybe what may well be found by the people involved in that inquiry based on what they knew about them. Look, that aside, I think this is the real question for our economy, is what level of public spending, of individual spending, do we need to keep getting out of this crisis and continue to improve the economy? On the flip side, how much saving do we need for long-term retirement? I think that is the crux of the question right now. Is 9.5% enough for our individual retirement incomes, and probably more importantly from a policy perspective, or at least as importantly, the impact on the budget? The whole idea of super, and then frankly Peter Costello's intergenerational report. So both sides of politics saying, look, we're not set up for a future where health costs go up, where we're living longer, where we have more people retired than working. These are real demographic challenges, and I think the real risk with this one is we look at the short term and say, gee, the economy could use an extra 0.5% of GDP. It'd be nice if we could find it. In 10, 20, 30 years' time, I do wonder if we go ahead with this, whether we're not asking ourselves, wow, that 0.5% of GDP, then that looks really cheap compared to the expense now of trying to make up the shortfall.
But Scott, what is the promise and the guarantee here that if you do delay that super guarantee, that wages actually go up? History would show that that's not correct.
That's exactly right, Laura, and that's the fig leaf. I think it really does seem to me a whole lot of people coalescing around this issue from their own individual perspectives. Someone saying housing, someone saying wages, someone saying too much super, someone saying people will die with superannuation left, therefore it's too generous. Lots of different reasons for the one outcome. It seems like a solution looking for a question rather than a genuine problem itself. As you say, cuts to penalty rates haven't seemed to increase wages. We've seen cuts to company tax that was supposed to also increase wages. Now we're doing the reverse and saying, well, if we cut super, maybe that'll increase wages. It really does seem like, this is a questionable policy reality. The market will decide how much people are worth paying, and that pay currently is at a level plus 9.5% super. I'm sure if you cut super, the wages might go up a little bit. But we're seeing the share of the economy, frankly, going to wages fall over time, and the amount going to profits is actually growing. So I don't know. Look, I'm an investor. I like companies making profits. I like making money from that. But it also seems to me that wages aren't really the problem here. It seems like the government maybe doesn't want to address maybe some of the bigger issues, and you see a big pot of money over there and say, well, if we tap that super, gee, we could solve some problems. That's right in the short term. In the long term, I think we might be paying for it.